The auction hall was loud and crowded. Voices echoed from every corner of the room as buyers studied the living beings standing on the platforms below. Some were workers, some were servants, and some were prisoners captured from distant worlds. To most people in the room, they were not individuals, they were products. On the smallest platform stood a young alien girl. She could not have been more than 10 years old. Her thin arms wrapped around her knees as she sat quietly on the cold metal floor. Her silver skin was covered with dirt. Her clothes were old and torn. A chain around her ankle connected her to the platform. Fear filled her bright blue eyes. Her name was Lyra. But nobody in the auction hall cared about her name. To them, she was simply item 47. The auctioneer walked across the stage and looked down at her. He shook his head with disappointment. Next item, he announced. Female child, no special skills, weak health condition. Low market value. A few buyers glanced toward Lyra. Most looked away almost immediately. One alien laughed, another shook his head. Nobody wanted a sick child. Nobody wanted a burden. Lyra lowered her eyes to the floor. She had heard these words many times before. Worthless, weak, useless. Those words followed her everywhere. What hurt most was not the strangers saying them. It was her own people. Months earlier, her own kind had abandoned her. They had traded her away for a small amount of credits. The memory still burned inside her heart. She remembered standing beside her village leader. She remembered begging them not to send her away. Nobody listened. Nobody cared. The credits mattered more. Since that day, she had been sold again and again. Every owner treated her like property. Every owner wanted something from her. When they realized she was weak, they sold her to someone else. Now she had reached the end of the line. Even traders did not think she was worth buying. The auctioneer checked his tablet. Starting bid. 500 credits. Silence. No hands rose. No offers appeared on the screen. The auctioneer sighed. 300 credits. Still nothing. Several buyers were already looking at other items. Lyra felt her chest tighten for a moment. She wondered if being ignored felt worse than being hated. At least hatred meant someone noticed you. The auctioneer looked annoyed. 100 credits, a few people chuckled. 100 credits was almost nothing, yet still nobody bid. The room continued moving around her as if she did not exist. Lyra stared at the floor. She tried not to cry. Crying never helped. It only made people laugh. The auctioneer opened his mouth to cancel the sale. Then something unexpected happened. The large entrance doors slowly opened. The heavy sound echoed through the hall. Immediately, conversation stopped. Heads turned toward the entrance. A strange silence spread across the room. Even the auctioneer paused. A tall figure stepped inside. He moved calmly through the crowd. His dark coat flowed behind him. His eyes scanned the room carefully. The moment people recognized his species, nervous whispers began. Human. The word traveled across the hall like a shockwave. Humans were famous throughout the galaxy. Some admired them, others feared them. Most preferred not to challenge them. No one expected a human to enter a place like this. The man continued walking forward. His expression remained calm. The crowd moved aside without being asked. Nobody wanted to stand in his path. The auctioneer forced a smile. Welcome. Sir. The human ignored him. His attention focused on the platforms. One by one, he examined the items for sale. Then his eyes stopped on Lyra. The little girl froze. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Unlike everyone else in the room, the human did not look disgusted. He did not look amused. He did not look bored. He simply looked at her, as if she mattered. Lyra quickly looked away. She had learned long ago not to trust kindness. Kindness usually came with a price. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Well, this item was about to be removed. The human stepped closer. How much? He asked. The auctioneer blinked. 100 credits. Several people laughed. The human looked at Lyra again. Then he spoke words that stunned the entire room. "I'll give 50,000 credits." The hall exploded with shock. Gasps filled the air. Buyers stared at him in disbelief. Some thought they had heard wrong. 50,000 credits for a sick child? It made no sense. The auctioneer nearly dropped his tablet. His mouth hung open. Lyra slowly lifted her head. For the first time all day, hope appeared inside her heart. A tiny spark, small but real, yet before anyone could react further, the human's expression suddenly changed. His eyes locked onto a strange symbol hidden beneath the dirt on Lyra's wrist. The moment he saw it, all color drained from his face. The symbol seemed familiar, dangerously familiar. For the first time since entering the auction hall, the human looked genuinely concerned, and in that moment, Lyra realized that buying her freedom might not have been his original reason for coming there at all. Because whatever he had just discovered on her wrist, it was important enough to make a human hero afraid. The auction hall remained silent long after the human made his offer. Nobody could understand what had just happened. 50,000 credits for a weak and unwanted child was madness. Even the auctioneer looked confused, but the human never changed his mind. Within minutes, the payment was completed. The chain around Lyra's ankle was removed. For the first time in many months, she was free. At least that was what everyone believed. Lyra stood quietly beside the human. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. Freedom was a word she no longer trusted. Every time her life seemed to improve, something worse happened. The human looked down at her. "My name is Ethan," he said calmly. "You don't need to be afraid." Lyra said nothing. She had heard kind words before. Kind words often hid cruel intentions. Ethan seemed to understand. He did not force her to answer. Instead, he simply led her toward the exit. The crowd watched them leave. Whispers followed them everywhere. Some buyers looked jealous. Others looked suspicious. A few seemed frightened. Nobody knew why a human captain would spend such a huge amount on an abandoned alien child. But one person in the auction hall knew exactly why. Far away in a private viewing room, a hooded figure watched the security screens. The stranger stared at Lyra's image, then at the symbol visible on her wrist. The figure immediately activated a communicator. "The child has been found," the stranger said. "And a human has taken her." The reply came seconds later. "Follow them. Do not lose her." The transmission ended meanwhile. Ethan and Lyra arrived at a massive starship waiting at the spaceport. The vessel was larger than anything Lyra had ever seen. Its silver hull reflected the light of distant stars. The name painted across the side read, HSS Horizon. Crew members moved around the landing area. Most greeted Ethan with respect, then they noticed Lyra. Confused looks appeared everywhere. A young officer approached. "Captain, who is she?" he asked. Ethan answered without hesitation. "She's under my protection." The officer raised an eyebrow but asked no more questions. Everyone aboard knew Ethan Ward was not a man who made careless decisions. If he brought someone onto the ship, there was a reason. Lyra followed Ethan inside. The ship felt warm, safe, clean, very different from the places she had been forced to live. Soon Ethan led her into a medical room. Several doctors immediately began examining her. At first Lyra resisted. Fear filled her mind. She expected pain, punishment, experiments, but none came. The doctors treated her gently. They gave her food, clean water, medicine. Hours later, she sat alone in a private cabin, a real cabin, not a cage. Not a storage room, not a prison cell. She stared at the soft bed in disbelief. Part of her wondered if she was dreaming. Elsewhere aboard the Horizon, Ethan stood inside his office. The door slid open. His first officer entered. Commander Sarah Brooks crossed her arms. "You paid 50,000 credits for a child," she said. "Please tell me there's a reason." Ethan remained silent for several seconds. Then he opened a holographic display. A glowing image appeared above his desk. It showed the strange symbol from Lyra's wrist. Sarah frowned. "What is that?" she asked. Ethan's expression became serious. "I've seen this before." Sarah looked surprised. "Where?" Ethan took a deep breath. 20 years ago. During a classified mission near the edge of known space. The symbol belonged to an ancient civilization everyone believed was extinct. Sarah stared at him. "You think she's connected to them?" "I know she is," Ethan replied. The room became quiet. The ancient civilization was more myth than history. Stories claimed they possessed knowledge far beyond modern technology. Entire governments had searched for evidence of them. Nobody found anything until now. Sarah looked toward the cabin section of the ship. Then why would someone sell her? Ethan's face darkened. Because someone wanted her hidden. Before Sarah could respond, alarms suddenly echoed throughout the bridge. Warning lights flashed red. Both officers rushed toward the command center. Crew members were already running to their stations. What happened? Ethan demanded. A navigation officer turned toward him. "Captain, we just received an encrypted transmission. Unknown sender. Messages marked highest priority." Ethan nodded. "Play it." The bridge screens flickered. A distorted figure appeared. Its face remained hidden beneath electronic interference. The voice sounded cold, emotionless, and dangerous. The message contained only a single sentence. "Return the child." The crew exchanged nervous looks. Then the voice continued. "Return her now, or every soul aboard your ship will die." The transmission ended immediately. Silence filled the bridge. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The threat felt real, very real. Sarah looked at Ethan. "Who are these people?" she asked. Ethan slowly stared at the dark screen. His instincts were already warning him. Something far bigger than a simple rescue mission had begun. Someone powerful had been searching for Lyra. Someone willing to kill hundreds to get her back. And deep inside, Ethan feared the truth. Because if the ancient stories were correct, the little girl sleeping peacefully in her cabin was not just an abandoned child. She might be the key to a secret that could change the entire galaxy. And now, the people hunting that secret knew exactly where she was. The bridge of the HSS Horizon remained quiet after the threatening message ended. Nobody spoke for several long seconds. The crew members looked at one another, wondering who could be powerful enough to track a human military vessel across space. Captain Ethan Ward stood in front of the main screen. His face remained calm, but inside his mind was racing. Someone had found Lyra far too quickly. That meant the people hunting her had resources far beyond ordinary criminals. This was organized, planned, and dangerous. A sensor officer suddenly looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple warp signatures," she reported. The bridge instantly became alert. "How many?" Ethan asked. The officer checked the readings again. Her eyes widened. 12 ships. A heavy silence fell across the room. 12 warships were not a coincidence. They were a fleet. And they were heading directly toward the horizon. "Time until contact?" Ethan asked. 4 minutes. Ethan nodded. "Raise shields and prepare for emergency maneuvers." The crew moved quickly. Red warning lights flashed throughout the ship. Meanwhile, deep inside the vessel, Lyra sat alone in her cabin. She had just finished eating a warm meal. It was the first real meal she could remember having in a long time. The food should have made her happy, but something felt wrong. She could feel tension spreading through the ship. The distant sound of alarms echoed through the halls. Fear slowly returned to her chest. For years, trouble had followed her everywhere. Maybe it had finally found her again. A few moments later, the door opened. Ethan stepped inside. Lyra immediately became nervous. The human captain crouched down to her level. "Lyra," he said gently. "We may have visitors." She lowered her eyes. "They came because of me, didn't they?" Ethan did not answer immediately. That silence told her everything. The little girl looked away. "I'm sorry." The words were barely a whisper. Ethan frowned. For what? People always get hurt because of me. For a moment, Ethan saw something heartbreaking in her expression. A child who truly believed she was the problem. A child who had been blamed her entire life. Ethan shook his head. No. Lyra, you are not the danger. The people chasing you are the danger. Before she could respond, the ship suddenly shook violently. The entire cabin trembled. Warning alarms grew louder. The enemy had arrived back on the bridge. 12 dark warships emerged from warp space. Their appearance sent chills through the crew. The vessels were sleek black and covered with advanced weapon systems. No military markings appeared on their hulls. They belonged to no known government. One massive ship moved to the center of the formation. Then a communication request appeared. Ethan accepted it. A tall alien appeared on the screen. His face was covered with scars. His golden eyes stared directly at Ethan. I am Commander Varek, he announced. Hand over the child. Ethan crossed his arms. No, the alien smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed violence. You misunderstand your situation. Human, I am giving you a chance to survive. Ethan's voice remained calm. And I'm giving you a chance to leave. Several crew members exchanged nervous glances. Nobody talked to armed fleets like that. But Ethan did not seem concerned. Varek's smile disappeared. You are protecting something you do not understand. That child belongs to us. Ethan's eyes narrowed. No child belongs to anyone. For the first time, anger appeared on the alien's face. You have 1 minute to surrender her. The transmission ended. The countdown began. Everyone on the bridge looked toward Ethan. The captain studied the enemy fleet. 12 ships, better weapons, superior numbers. Most commanders would surrender. Ethan was not most commanders. Helm, he said calmly. Set course for the asteroid field ahead. The pilot blinked. The asteroid field? Yes, it's our best chance. The crew immediately obeyed. 30 seconds later, the horizon accelerated. The human ship raced toward a massive field of spinning rocks and debris. Behind them, the enemy fleet followed, weapons fired across space. Bright beams of energy flashed past the horizon. Explosions lit up the darkness. The chase had begun inside her cabin. Lyra was thrown from her chair as the ship turned sharply. She grabbed the edge of her bed. Fear filled her eyes outside the window. Giant asteroids rushed past at incredible speed. Suddenly, a strange feeling spread through her body. At first, she thought it was fear, but it felt different, warmer, stronger. The symbol on her wrist began glowing softly. Lyra stared at it in shock. The light slowly spread across her skin. The cabin filled with a faint silver glow. What is happening? She whispered. The glow became brighter and brighter. Then images suddenly flashed inside her mind. Ancient cities, strange stars, gigantic machines floating in space. Voices she had never heard before. Memories that did not belong to her. Lyra gasped and grabbed her head. The visions felt real. As if someone was trying to show her something important. Back on the bridge, another officer suddenly shouted, "Captain!" Ethan turned. What is it? I'm detecting an unknown energy source aboard our ship. The officer looked confused. It appears to be coming from Lyra. Ethan's heart skipped a beat at that exact moment. A massive burst of silver energy exploded from the center of the horizon. The shockwave spread into space. Every ship in the area detected it instantly. The enemy fleet immediately stopped firing. Commander Varek stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. His face turned pale. No, he whispered. It can't be. For the first time since the chase began, the hunter looked afraid. Because the energy signal coming from Lyra was something he recognized. Something his masters had spent decades searching for. The power of the ancient bloodline had finally awakened. And the galaxy was about to learn why entire civilizations once feared it. The silver shockwave spread across space like a giant wave of light. Every ship in the area detected it. Every sensor alarm began flashing for several seconds. Nobody understood what had happened. The enemy fleet stopped firing. The crew aboard the Horizon stared at their screens in confusion, and deep inside the ship, Lyra sat on the floor of her cabin, breathing heavily. The glowing symbol on her wrist slowly faded. The strange visions disappeared, but the fear remained. She had never experienced anything like it before. She looked at her hands. They were trembling. What was that? She whispered. At the same time, Captain Ethan Ward rushed toward her cabin. Two security officers followed close behind when the door opened. Ethan immediately saw Lyra sitting alone. The room looked normal. Nothing appeared damaged. But the energy readings were still showing impossible numbers. Ethan knelt beside her. "Lyra, are you hurt?" She slowly shook her head. "I don't think so." Ethan noticed fear in her eyes. "What happened?" The little girl hesitated. Then she explained everything. The glowing mark, the strange images, the voices, the ancient cities, every detail. Ethan listened carefully when she finished speaking. His expression became serious, because her story matched old records he had seen many years ago. Records that most governments claimed were myths. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Commander Sarah Brooks was studying the energy data. The numbers made no sense. The power released by Lyra was stronger than many military weapons, yet it came from a frightened child. Suddenly another officer called out, "Commander, we intercepted a transmission from the enemy fleet." Sarah looked up. "Play it." The recording began immediately. It was Commander Varek speaking to someone. His voice sounded nervous. A surprising change from the confident hunter they had seen earlier. "The bloodline is active," Varek reported. "We have confirmed it." Several seconds of silence followed. Then another voice answered. The voice was deep, cold, and powerful. "Capture the girl alive. Failure is not acceptable." The transmission ended. Sarah frowned. Whoever that second voice belonged to, they were clearly the true leader. And they were desperate to find Lyra back in her cabin. Ethan sat quietly for several moments. Finally he stood. "There is something you need to see," he said. Lyra looked confused. "What is it?" "Answers." The little girl followed him through the ship. Soon they arrived inside a secure research room. Only senior officers had access to this place. Large holographic screens covered the walls. Ancient star maps floated in the air. Old symbols rotated above glowing displays. Lyra stared in amazement. She had never seen technology like this before. Ethan activated one of the screens. A picture appeared. It showed a beautiful alien city. Tall silver towers reached toward the sky. Crystal bridges connected floating buildings. The city looked peaceful, almost magical. Lyra felt something strange inside her chest. The place seemed familiar. Ethan noticed her reaction. "Do you recognize it?" She nodded slowly. "I saw it in the visions." Ethan exchanged a glance with Sarah. That confirmed it. The captain turned back toward Lyra. This city belonged to a civilization known as the Alari, the oldest civilization ever discovered. Lyra listened carefully. The name felt strangely familiar. The Alari existed thousands of years ago, Ethan continued. They possessed knowledge far beyond modern science. They built technologies nobody could fully understand. They explored regions of space that remain unexplored even today. Sarah activated another display. A map of the galaxy appeared. Several ancient locations glowed brightly, but one day they vanished. Sarah explained. No one knew why. No one even knew if they were real. Ethan looked directly at Lyra until now. The room became silent. Lyra stared at the image of the ancient city. A terrible feeling slowly grew inside her. "What does this have to do with me?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. Then he answered, "Everything." He activated another hologram. This time a family symbol appeared. The exact same symbol that was on Lyra's wrist. The little girl gasped. It was identical. The mark belongs to the ruling bloodline of the Ilari. Ethan said. Only members of the royal family carried it. Lyra's heart began racing. No, she whispered. That's impossible. But deep inside, she already knew the truth. The visions, the symbol, the hunters. Everything suddenly connected. Ethan's voice softened. Lyra, you are not an ordinary child. You are the last known descendant of the Ilari rulers. The words felt unreal. The room seemed to spin around her. She had spent her entire life believing she was worthless. Unwanted, forgotten. Now she was hearing something completely different. Before anyone could speak again, another alarm suddenly sounded. The bridge contacted them immediately. Captain, we have a problem. Ethan touched his communicator. Report. The officer's voice sounded urgent. We just detected multiple transmissions leaving the enemy fleet. They're sending data across the galaxy. Sarah's eyes widened. What kind of data? The answer came seconds later. The location of an ancient Ilari facility. Everyone froze. Ethan immediately understood. The hunters had found something. Something connected to Lyra's people, and they were moving quickly. A second report arrived almost instantly. Captain, long-range scans confirm enemy ships are changing course. They're heading toward the facility right now. Lyra looked at Ethan nervously. What is in that place? Ethan stared at the star map, his face darkening. If the legends are true, it contains the greatest secret the Ilari ever protected. Sarah looked at him. The ancient technology? Ethan nodded slowly. The room fell silent once more. Because everyone understood what it meant. If the enemy reached the facility first, they might gain access to power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. And for the first time, Lyra realized the terrible truth. The hunters were not chasing her because of who she was. They were chasing her because she was the key to unlocking something that could change the fate of every world in the galaxy. The research room remained silent after the latest report. Everyone understood the danger. The enemy fleet was racing toward the ancient Ilari facility. And if the legends were true, whatever was hidden there could change the balance of power across the entire galaxy. Lyra stood quietly beside the holographic star map. The glowing routes of the enemy ships flashed before her eyes for the first time. She felt the weight of who she was. Not long ago, she had been an unwanted child sold for credits. Now entire fleets were moving because of her existence. The thought frightened her. What if this is my fault? She asked softly. Nobody answered immediately. Ethan finally stepped forward. It isn't. Lyra looked down. But people are hunting me. They are attacking your ship because of me. They might hurt your crew because of me. Ethan shook his head. No, Lyra. They are making their own choices. The responsibility belongs to them. Not you. The little girl remained silent. Years of rejection could not disappear overnight. Part of her still believed she brought trouble wherever she went. Ethan noticed the sadness in her eyes. He remembered seeing the same look on refugees during old wars. People who had been blamed for things beyond their control. He knelt beside her. Listen carefully, he said. Lyra slowly raised her head. You are not a burden. You are not worthless. And you are not alone anymore. For several seconds she simply stared at him. Nobody had ever said those words to her before. Not her village, not her owners, not anyone. Something warm stirred inside her chest. A feeling she barely recognized. Hope. Before the moment could continue, another officer entered the room. Captain, the crew briefing is ready. Ethan stood. Let's go. A short time later, senior officers gathered inside the command center. The atmosphere was tense. A large holographic image of the ancient facility floated above the table. Commander Sarah Brooks pointed toward the display, based on recovered records. This structure predates every modern government in the galaxy. It has remained hidden for thousands of years. One officer frowned, and the enemy knows exactly where it is. Sarah nodded. Apparently, another officer looked concerned. If they reach it first, what happens? Nobody answered immediately. Finally, Ethan spoke. We don't know. And that's exactly why we can't let them get there first. The room grew quiet. Everyone understood the seriousness of the situation. Suddenly, a communication alert appeared. The bridge officer looked surprised. Captain, we're receiving a direct transmission from the enemy fleet. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Put it through. The image of Commander Varric appeared once again. This time he looked less confident than before. Almost desperate, his golden eyes focused directly on Lyra, who stood near the back of the room. Child, Varric said. You do not understand what you are. Lyra remained silent. Varric continued. The human cannot protect you forever. Come willingly, and nobody else will suffer. Several officers exchanged angry looks. The threat was obvious. Ethan stepped forward. You seem nervous, Varric. The alien's expression hardened. You should be nervous too. Human, Ethan smiled slightly. I've survived worse. For a moment, Varric's eyes narrowed. Then he looked directly at Lyra again. The truth is coming. When it does, even your human protector will fear you. The transmission ended. The room became quiet once more. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. What had he meant by that? Before she could ask, Ethan turned off the display. Ignore him. But Ethan himself seemed troubled. Later that evening, the Horizon continued its journey through deep space. Most of the crew remained busy preparing for whatever waited ahead. Meanwhile, Lyra wandered through one of the observation decks. Beyond the large windows, endless stars filled the darkness. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to simply sit and watch them. A few moments later, Ethan entered the room. Neither spoke for a while. They simply stared at the stars. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. Why did you buy me? The question surprised him. She looked genuinely curious. Ethan thought carefully before answering. At first? Lyra nodded. I noticed the symbol on your wrist. She lowered her eyes. So it wasn't because of me. Ethan immediately understood her meaning. The answer mattered more than she wanted to admit. He sat beside her. That may be why I stopped. But it's not why I stayed. Lyra looked up, confused. Ethan smiled gently. When I looked at you, I didn't see some ancient bloodline. I saw a frightened child who needed help. The words hit her harder than she expected. For years she had been treated like property. A problem, a mistake. Nobody had ever simply seen her as a child. Tears slowly formed in her eyes. She quickly tried to hide them. But Ethan noticed without hesitation. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture. Yet it carried more kindness than anything she had experienced before. No matter what happens, Ethan said, no matter who is hunting you, no matter what secrets are hidden in your past, I promise I won't abandon you. Lyra froze. The promise felt different. Real, strong. The kind of promise made by someone who truly meant it. For the first time since leaving her homeworld, she believed someone cared whether she lived or died. A small smile appeared on her face. And seeing it made Ethan realize something important. He was no longer protecting her because it was the right thing to do. He was protecting her because she had become family. But far away, deep inside enemy territory, another meeting was taking place. A massive shadow-covered chamber stretched into darkness. Commander Varric knelt before a towering figure seated upon a black throne. The mysterious leader slowly rose, his face hidden beneath a metallic mask. The child is awakening. Varric reported. The figure remained silent, then he spoke. A voice cold enough to freeze blood. Prepare the next phase. Varric hesitated. The human captain continues interfering. The masked leader's eyes glowed faintly. Then remove him. A holographic image appeared above the throne, showing Ethan Ward. Several red targeting markers surrounded his face. The leader stared at the image for several seconds, then gave a chilling order: capture the girl and bring me the human alive. Because hidden within Ethan's forgotten past was a secret even more valuable than Lyra herself. And soon, both of them would be forced to face it. The HSS Horizon raced through deep space at maximum speed. Its engines burned brightly as the ancient Ilari facility grew closer with every passing hour. Inside the ship, tension could be felt everywhere. Crew members moved quickly through the halls. Weapons were checked, shields were reinforced. And every officer knew the same thing. A major battle was coming in the command center. Captain Ethan Ward studied the latest reports. The enemy fleet was no longer hiding. More ships had joined Commander Varrique's forces. What had once been 12 warships had now grown into an entire armada. The numbers were alarming. Even the experienced officers looked worried. Sarah Brooks crossed her arms. "Our chances are getting worse," Ethan nodded. "I know," one officer stepped forward. "Captain, if they keep receiving reinforcements, we won't be able to stop them alone." The room became quiet. Everyone knew he was right, for the first time since the mission began. Ethan faced a simple truth: the Horizon could not win this fight by itself. After several seconds of silence, Ethan made a decision. "Open a secure channel to Earth Command." Several officers looked surprised. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You want to call for help?" Ethan smiled slightly. "I think it's time humanity joined the conversation." Minutes later, a secure transmission connected across the stars. A holographic image appeared. An older human admiral stood on the screen. His face immediately became serious. "Ethan," he said, "you only call me when something important is happening." Ethan nodded. "Sir, I need every report regarding the Ilari bloodline." The admiral's expression changed instantly. The room became silent, even through the screen. Everyone could see the shock in his eyes. "Where did you hear that name?" the admiral asked. Ethan glanced toward Lyra. The little girl stood quietly near the back of the bridge. The admiral followed his gaze, then understanding slowly appeared on his face. "Oh no," Ethan explained everything. The auction, the symbol, the hunters, the ancient facility, and the growing enemy fleet. When he finished, the admiral remained silent for several moments. Finally he spoke. "You have no idea how dangerous this situation is." Ethan folded his arms. "I have a feeling you're about to tell me." The admiral nodded. "Thousands of years ago, the Ilari created something called the Stellar Core." Several officers exchanged confused looks. The admiral continued. "It wasn't a weapon. It was something far greater. A machine capable of controlling energy on a galactic scale." The bridge became completely silent. Even Sarah looked stunned. "If someone gained control of it," the admiral continued, "they could dominate entire star systems." Lyra felt her stomach tighten. Suddenly the vision she had seen felt even more important. The enemy was not chasing her for power alone. They were chasing control of the galaxy itself. The admiral looked directly at Ethan. "You are not facing pirates. You are facing an organization that has spent centuries searching for the stellar core." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Then send help," the admiral smiled. "I already have." The transmission ended. Several crew members looked confused. Then the sensor officer suddenly jumped from her chair. "Captain!" Ethan turned. "What is it?" The officer pointed toward the main screen. Multiple warp signatures detected. The bridge instantly became alert. "Enemy ships?" Sarah asked. The officer shook her head. "No." A huge smile spread across her face. "There hours, one after another, enormous warships emerged from warp space. Then more appeared, and more and more. The darkness filled with human vessels. Destroyers, cruisers, battle carriers. Entire formations of advanced warships surrounded the horizon. The sight was breathtaking. Crew members stared in amazement. Lyra had never seen so many ships together. The sensor officer's voice trembled. 147 human warships have arrived. A cheer erupted across the bridge. Humanity had answered, and they had not come quietly. Far away, aboard the enemy flagship, Commander Varek watched the same sensor reports. His confidence disappeared immediately. "Impossible," he whispered. No one expected humanity to deploy such a force so quickly. The masked leader stood beside him, his expression hidden behind cold metal, yet even he seemed concerned. "The humans are interfering more than expected," Varek admitted. The leader's glowing eyes narrowed. "Then we eliminate them." Back aboard the horizon, another message arrived, this time from the newly arrived human fleet. A familiar voice echoed through the bridge. "This is Fleet Admiral Jonathan Hayes of the Terran Defense Fleet." The image of a massive human warship appeared. Behind it stretched an entire armada. The Admiral smiled confidently. "Captain Ward, looks like you're hosting quite a party." Several crew members laughed. The tension finally breaking, Ethan smiled. "Glad you could make it." The Admiral's expression became serious. "No one threatens human civilians under our protection." His eyes briefly shifted toward Lyra. "And no one hunts children while humanity is watching." The words hit Lyra harder than she expected. Nobody had ever defended her before. Nobody had ever crossed the stars for her. Yet an entire fleet was now standing between her and the people hunting her, for the first time in her life. She felt something stronger than hope. She felt belonging. But the battle was not over. Far ahead, the ancient Ilari facility finally appeared on long-range scanners. A gigantic structure hidden within a field of shattered moons. Its silver surface glowed faintly against the darkness. The destination both sides had been racing toward. The place where the secret of the stellar core waited. And as hundreds of human and enemy warships moved toward it, everyone understood the truth. The next battle would decide far more than Lyra's future. It would decide the future of the entire galaxy. And hidden deep within the ancient facility, something had just awakened. Something that had been waiting thousands of years for the last child of the Ilari bloodline to return. The ancient Ilari facility floated silently among the shattered moons. Its silver surface glowed brighter with every passing minute. Hundreds of warships surrounded the area. Human vessels formed defensive lines around the horizon. Enemy fleets gathered on the opposite side. The final battle was about to begin. Inside the command center of the horizon, everyone watched the massive structure on the main screen. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. The fate of the galaxy now rested on what happened next. Suddenly, a deep vibration traveled through the ship. The entire bridge trembled, warning lights flashed. Sensor officers quickly checked their displays. "Captain!" One shouted, "The facility is activating." The silver structure began releasing enormous waves of energy. Ancient symbols appeared across its surface. The same symbols that existed on Lyra's wrist. Every screen aboard the ship displayed identical readings. Something inside the facility had recognized her presence. Lyra stared at the glowing image. A strange feeling pulled at her heart. It felt almost like someone was calling her home. Ethan noticed her expression. "You know what you need to do, don't you?" he asked. Lyra slowly nodded. For the first time since discovering the truth, she was no longer afraid. The frightened little girl from the auction hall was gone. In her place stood someone ready to face her destiny. A shuttle quickly carried Ethan, Sarah, and Lyra toward the ancient structure. Meanwhile, outside, the battle finally erupted. Human warships opened fire. Enemy fleets answered immediately. The darkness of space exploded with light. Massive beams of energy crossed between hundreds of ships. Explosions lit up the stars. The largest battle in recent galactic history had begun. Inside the facility, Lyra stepped onto smooth silver floors. The halls seemed endless. Ancient lights activated one by one as she walked. As if the building itself recognized her, the group eventually reached a giant circular chamber. At its center stood a glowing crystal surrounded by floating rings of energy. The stellar core, for thousands of years, it had remained hidden, waiting, protecting itself, until the rightful heir returned. The moment Lyra entered the chamber, the crystal reacted. A brilliant silver light filled the room. Ancient voices echoed through the air. Images appeared all around them, scenes from the distant past. The fall of the Ilari civilization, the betrayal, the wars. The destruction of entire worlds. Lyra watched in shock. Her ancestors had not been destroyed by enemies alone. They had been betrayed from within. Powerful leaders had wanted control of the stellar core. When they failed to obtain it, they turned against their own people. Millions died. And the surviving royal bloodline was hunted across the galaxy, including Lyra's family. Tears filled her eyes for the first time. She understood why she had spent her life running, why people wanted her dead, and why the hunters had never stopped searching. Suddenly, another figure entered the chamber. The masked leader. He had somehow broken through the battle outside. Several armed soldiers followed behind him. His glowing eyes focused entirely on Lyra. At last, he said. The final heir. Ethan stepped in front of her immediately. The masked leader laughed softly. You still protect her, human? Ethan's answer came without hesitation. Always. The soldiers raised their weapons, but before anyone could fire, the stellar core released another pulse of energy. The chamber shook violently. Ancient symbols covered every wall. The crystal began responding directly to Lyra. The masked leader realized the truth. Only she could control it. Only she could unlock its full power. Give me the core, he demanded. Lyra stared at him, then slowly shook her head. The leader's patience vanished. He ordered his soldiers forward. What happened next shocked everyone. The crystal suddenly surrounded Lyra with silver light. The ancient technology had chosen its guardian. Not its ruler, not its owner, its guardian. Knowledge flowed into her mind. She finally understood the purpose of the stellar core. It was never meant to be a weapon. It was designed to help civilizations, to provide unlimited clean energy, to end wars over resources, to unite worlds instead of conquering them. Her ancestors had hidden it because they feared greedy leaders would abuse it. The masked leader represented exactly that danger. Lyra raised her hand. The chamber responded instantly. The soldiers' weapons powered down. The leader's armor shut itself off. Every piece of hostile technology inside the facility became useless. The battle outside stopped as enemy ships suddenly lost power. Across the battlefield, hundreds of vessels drifted helplessly. The war ended within seconds. Silence returned to space. The masked leader collapsed to his knees. His plan had failed. His centuries-long hunt was over. Human forces quickly arrested him and his followers. The threat was finally gone. Days later, the truth spread across the galaxy. Governments learned about the betrayal of the Ilari. The criminal organization was exposed. Worlds that had secretly supported the hunters faced justice. And the stellar core was placed under the protection of a new galactic alliance. Many leaders approached Lyra with offers. Some wanted her to rule. Others wanted her to rebuild the Ilari Empire. But Lyra surprised everyone. She refused them all. One evening aboard the Horizon, she stood beside Ethan in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them. You could have anything now, Ethan said. Lyra smiled. I already have what I want. Ethan looked at her. What is that? The little girl thought for a moment, then gave the answer that changed everything. A family. For a second, Ethan said nothing, then he smiled. The same smile he had given her the day he bought her freedom. Months later, the galaxy witnessed something unexpected. Captain Ethan Ward officially adopted Lyra. The story spread across countless worlds. People remembered how she had once been sold for a handful of credits. Forgotten by her own kind, treated as worthless. Yet the human who rescued her had seen something nobody else did, not a royal bloodline, Not a galactic secret, not a source of power. Just a child who needed someone to care, and in the end, that simple act of kindness accomplished what fleets, governments, and wars never could. It saved a life, united a galaxy, and proved once again why humanity's greatest strength was never its ships or its weapons. It was its heart.